Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. We're doing a mushroom broth, and I'm taking it out of the Vegan Instant Pot Cookbook by Nisha Vora. I hope I'm saying that properly. I've read through the recipe already. I've prepped my mise en place, so I've got everything kind of out and ready. I don't have anything chopped yet, but I've at least got all of the ingredients together that I'm gonna need. I also always bring out a stock scraps box. So anytime I'm cooking, I'll throw any scraps like ends of onions, shreds of garlic skin, things like that, the ends of carrots. Basically anything that's I would normally throw away food-wise, I actually put in this stock scrap bucket. And I save it. Once it gets full, I end up making a veggie stock with it later. So it's a good use of kind of all of the elements. So let's get going. For the mushrooms, anyone knows me that knows I don't like mushrooms. I actually really hate mushrooms. Texturally, I think they're awful, but I know that they impart really good umami flavors, and I wanted to give this mushroom broth a try. So I went out to the store, I bought everything needed, basically for the fresh mushrooms. It calls for 16 ounces. I only bought 10 because I'm not gonna buy 3 or 4 different packs of mushrooms. 2 is plenty. So there's shiitake. And then in terms of the dried mushrooms that it called for 2 ounces, and I used organic shiitake and organic porcini. So it's what I'm working with today, and we'll see how it goes. I do have the dried mushrooms over here. They're soaking in the pot of water as called for by the recipe. If you could smell it, it actually smells really good. I think it's going to impart really good flavor. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go through the recipe, bring you guys along, show you the finished product, and see how it turns out. Okay, so first step we're going to do, I've got the dried mushrooms in a large bowl soaking. Great. We're going to drain those in a second. I'm going to drain those right now because they've been soaking longer than 20 minutes. So we're just going to take this bowl, dump it. There we go. Come on, little guy. Well, whatever. I'll pull him out. Put this guy in here. Call it done. I will set that there for now. And then I'm going to click the saute setting. Saute. And I'm going to bump it up so that it doesn't turn off on me. I'll cancel it later so that it shuts off when I need it to. I'm just going to put it on for 20 minutes. It does not call for oil on the bottom, but I am going to put just a smidge so that nothing sticks to the bottom. Just a little baby guy. I am using canola oil. I find that actually sauteing with canola oil works better. Dropping the cap. Than olive oil. So here we go. Select the saute setting. Let it warm up. Do the diced mushroom. So I've got my mushroom here. I'm going to start working on the onion first. Got my knife ready. See if I can make it through without getting too teary-eyed because onions make me cry a lot. Again, I'm just kind of throwing all the skins and the ends of the onion into my stock scrap bucket. There we go. Getting all the skins out. Chop it in half. It says a rough chop, which is perfect for me because I don't like to finely chop most things. So I'm just going to make sure when you're chopping, you actually put your knuckles down first so that you don't actually chop your fingers off. Nobody wants fingers in their broth. So kind of a rough chop. I'm just going to leave it like that. Again, I'm going to peel this guy. Eventually I'll get faster at this. And I'm starting to cry. Here we go. Onions. Teary-eyed. Quick chop. Woo, baby, here come the waterworks. Gonna put the onions in there. Get them out of my face. Alrighty. Boom, boom, boom. And here we go. You can already hear it starting to sizzle. Okay, now we're going to take the mushrooms. They're mostly sliced, so I'm not going to do too much to them, to be honest. Just make them a little bit smaller. Throw them in. I am doing this whole bucket, so Give it a little stir so it doesn't stick to the bottom. I haven't added any salt. Actually, you can already smell the fragrance of the mushrooms. It actually smells really good. And my love-hate relationship with the mushrooms continues to grow. And most of these are actually pretty small, so you know what? I'm just going to dump them in. Close enough. Put them all in there. You'd probably, if you had whole fresh mushrooms, you'd have to spend more time chopping them, of course. But because they were already mostly sliced, I'm just going to throw them in as is. Okay, so continuing on. Mushrooms and onions. Yada, yada, yada. Let them release the liquid. So basically, I'm just kind of watching the saute until they're softened and the mushrooms release some liquid. Gonna let that sit for a minute. While that's sauteing, I am gonna prep the carrots. So I'm gonna chop the ends off. These are already washed, they are not peeled. The ends are going into my scrap bucket. This also says a rough chop, so again, because we're making a broth, it doesn't really matter. You just want it kind of sizable so that, you know, they kind of moisten down, release their juices. So I've kind of chopped it like that. So like they're fairly big. I'll set them on the side here. Carrots are rolling away. Great. So my carrots are prepped and ready. We're also going to set the garlic in. So I've got the garlic cloves. It calls for 6 cloves. I actually have 7 here because a couple of them are kind of on the small side. Basically, it just says to smash it, open them up. So that's all I'm doing. I'm going to put the garlic peels in my stock scrap. I've prepped the garlic cloves. I'm going to give this a quick saute again, stir, make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. The mushrooms have definitely released some liquid. I don't know if you can get a look over here. So as you can see, I don't know, the lighting's not awesome right here, but definitely a ton of liquid there. I did like maybe a teaspoon of all of the canola oil, and the rest of the liquid is all from the onions and the mushrooms. So it's looking good, it's smelling good. It's got a nice little rumble there going. Okay, so the mushrooms are in a good space. She says right here, cook until the vegetables are softened and the mushrooms have reduced in size. She gives about 6 or 7 minutes. I've done about that. The mushrooms definitely look a little smaller. The liquid has released. So next up is adding the carrots, the garlic, and the wine. So I'm going to throw in the carrots. Again, kind of a rough chop here. And then the garlic is peeled and essentially just smashed to release more juices and flavor that way. So we're going to plop everything in. Give it another quick stir. Okay. Next is the wine. So she calls for Pinot Noir. We don't have Pinot Noir in the house right now. So I instead am using this lovely Chianti. Mia Chiara. My husband is drinking some right now. I have yet to taste it, but it smells good. So hoping that that imparts the good flavor that she's looking for here in this recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and add this. She says a cup. Yes. A dry red. She suggests a Pinot, so really whatever you want to use is probably fine. Wine is wine. Okay. Here's about a cup. In she goes. And we're done with that. So now we're going to kind of let this keep cooking, stirring occasionally. We're looking for the liquid to evaporate and the smell of alcohol to disappear. So kind of a little bit of a waiting game in the next 5 or 8 minutes. If you want to come over here and kind of take a look at the pot now. Yep, so as you can see, mushrooms, onions, carrots, garlic, and the red wine. It is still on saute, so the Instant Pot is still on the saute, I don't know what you call it, button, whatever. And we're just going to let it simmer here for a few more minutes. Okay, so while that's sauteing and evaporating, the next steps are going to be adding the dried mushroom. So these are the mushrooms that were dried, and then I soaked in warm water to kind of soften them a little bit. So these are going to go in next. And then are the bay leaves, the thyme sprigs. Oh my gosh, this bay leaf keeps falling over. The thyme sprigs. I've got the peppercorns here. She does say tamari. I don't have tamari, so I'm going to just use this liquid aminos, which is a natural version of soy sauce. So that's what I'm going to be using. And then water and salt. So just going to wait a couple more minutes here. I don't think we're quite ready. Close. We're close. Okay, so the pot has been sauteing for a little while. The alcohol smell has evaporated, so it's looking good. Actually, if you want to come have a look here, I can show you what it looks like now. So it's obviously still kind of essentially boiling quite rapidly, but the liquid amount has decreased. It smells really good, but it smells more blended, and it doesn't smell like I just dumped a bunch of wine in there. So it's actually smelling really good, really fragrant. You got the notes of the mushrooms in there, the onions, and the red wine. So it's actually a really nice bouquet right now. So we're in our last section of additions for this broth. Now we're going to take the drained, reconstituted mushrooms. So again, these are the ones that were dried. They're all drained out, so I'm just going to plop them in, give it a little shake, put that in the sink. Now we're going to do the bay leaves. Let's see, it calls for 3. Yeah, we're going to do 3. That's fine, although mine are kind of small, but whatever. So in go the bay leaves. There we go. Looking for some thyme sprigs now. She calls for 6 to 8. I do have some fresh thyme with me. Let's see if I can open this. Yes, we can. Okay, so, I mean, you know, she says 6 or 8. I'm just going to plop some in. Good enough. That looks good. There we go. Okay. Next is the peppercorns. I don't know what happened in my peppercorn refiller, so just going to pull this out of my shaker here. About a teaspoon. I will measure this because if you do too much peppercorn, it can be a little intense. So yes, there we go. Boom. That's done. Okay, again, the tamari, I'm using instead this liquid amino soy sauce alternative. And this is, what does she call for here? She calls for, oh, a 1/4 cup. So I've got a cup here. I'm just going to guess about 25% of this. Yeah, I've done about that much. I'm going to say that's close enough to a 1/4. Dump that in. Okay. And lastly, we've got some water and salt. So for salt, she's saying a 1/4. Again, because the soy sauce alternative is going to be salty as well, so you don't want to add too much salt. But again, this is a mushroom broth, so it's going to have a lot of umami. So let's see what the finished product is. There's that. And then lastly, so I said I had less mushrooms, called for 16 ounces. I only used 10. The recipe now calls for 6 to 8 cups of water. No, I lied. Calls for 8 cups of water. I'm going to use 6. Maybe 7. There we go. Popping the water in. We're at, what is this? This is 3 cups. 4. 5. Let's see if we have enough Brita filter. 6. Do I want to do one more? Yeah, I'll do one more. We'll stop there. So I did 7. Okay, so stir to combine. Give it a little shake. If you want to actually come take a look at what the full pot looks like now. Here you'll see the pot is now full of all of the ingredients. It's starting to get actually a really, let me see if I have a spoon somewhere. Kind of a nice darker color. Well, it's a black spoon, so I'm probably not gonna be able to see it, but you get the idea. It's starting to turn brown. It's starting to look like broth. It smells really good. So next step for this is gonna be closing the pot, putting it on pressure cook, letting it do its thing. So I have canceled the saute button. We're gonna move to pressure cook now. Everything is in. Put the lid on. We're gonna make sure it's on seal so that it builds the pressure. Pressure cook setting to high pressure. So we're gonna do pressure cook. It's on high and she wants me to set it to 30 minutes. So I have let the Instant Pot do its 30 minutes of pressure cooking. And then she does suggest letting it naturally pressure release for about 15. I've actually done it for about 42 because I got sidetracked. I did some other meal prepping and I did some tidying up of the space. So I'm getting to it now. We're at about 42 minutes of after the pressurized cook. It should be pretty much de-vented at this point, but I'm just gonna use this just in case there's any steam that comes out. So I'm gonna click the knob. Hardly any steam, so that means it's done, ready to go. Twisting it off. Ooh, it smells interesting. Okay, very mushroomy, a little bit of red wine in there, some herbs. Oh, that was a good whiff. Okay, that smells good. All right, I'm gonna have the camera come over and take a look. Okay, so this is what the pot looks like now after sitting for a while. You can see that everything is kind of really, you know, saturated, muddled down. Lots of liquid in here now also. So it looks good, it smells good. It's probably gonna be a little bit hot, but I am gonna give it a little tiny taste. Try to get just a little broth here. It's pretty hot. Okay, yes. That has some good umami to it. Actually, the wine helps kind of give it a nice fullness to it. So I'll use this once I dump it in, strain it, and put it in the mason jars. I'll plan to use this for anything that calls for water. You could use this for pasta. You could use this for rice. It would be a really good water replacement for rice. Cook it in some, whatever kind of meat you're doing. If it calls for water or you want to add a little moisture, this would be really delicious for that. So I'm going to give this a thumbs up. And then pretty much at this point, I'm just going to take the container. Actually, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it here. It's pretty hot. So I'm just going to let it cool down some. Basically, next steps are dumping it into this sieve so that it collects all of the solids. The broth will go into the bowl. I'll let the bowl cool a little bit more, and then I'm gonna pop it into my mason jars. I use the mason jars for everything. I put all of my stocks, broths, any soup that is essentially pureed will always go into a mason jar. And what she says is the broth is good in the refrigerator for 3 or 4 days, and then it's good in the freezer, she says, up to 3 months. So it has a really good shelf life in it too. Also, she says, if you follow the recipe exactly, it'll make about 9 cups. I made some personal liberties, made a couple adjustments here and there, so I did not follow it exactly, so I'll probably get a little bit less, but just so you kind of know what you're working with. Cool, okay, thanks for joining.